So I'm a recovering narcissist. And for the last year, I have relentlessly been trying to figure out how to improve my own empathy, both as a lover and as a father. And I've had some really amazing experiences, which is why I wanted to create this video. In this video, I'm going to explain the real reason that narcissists struggle so much with empathy. It's as if there's a switch in their brain that could have been turned on in childhood, but was never quite turned on. I'm also going to talk about my personal journey and how I went from having a cold, narcissistic heart and how I converted that into having an open and empathetic heart. This video is the result of hundreds of hours of personal experience and research. And so I hope it's helpful to you, whether you are the lover of a narcissist who's trying to understand them, but also understand how to engage with them, or you're the narcissist themselves who just wants to learn how to be more empathetic so you can show up and have fulfilling relationships. This video is for you. So here's the weird thing. Not all narcissists lack empathy, and even those who do lack empathy don't lack empathy all the time. In fact, I was in a video call with the narcissist support group that I do, where everyone in the room is a narcissist, and we were talking about empathy, funny enough. And one guy stopped and shared how he was struggling in his romantic relationships and what that effect was having on him and his wife, actually. And everyone in the room paused, and they were, sending, into the chat, we love you, Doug, we're sorry. And people interrupted it, or jumped in vocally and said, man, that's so hard. I felt that too. I understand. I kind of laughed at myself because I was like, this is a room full of narcissists who are supposed to lack empathy. And yet every person here was really connecting with what Doug was saying. And this is actually true of most narcissism. So in the DSM-5, the Diagnostic Criteria Manual in America, in order for someone to become a narcissist, you actually need to show 5 of the 9 dimensions. And lack of empathy is only just one of those dimensions. So there are lots of narcissists who are diagnosed with narcissism that don't lack empathy at all. And I personally experienced this as well. See, in a lot of ways I was unempathetic, but in other ways I wasn't. In fact, if it was in an area where I had felt pain before, so going through a divorce or the death of a loved one, which I have experienced, I'm extremely empathetic. Like, I will reach out to my friends who are struggling with marital problems, and I will be thinking of them in the morning when I wake up, texting them saying, hey, how you doing, since our last chat. And that's empathy right there. So why is it that some narcissists have empathy, some don't, or all narcissists actually share empathy in some ways? Well, to understand that, we actually have to understand what causes narcissism to begin with. So let's go back a layer. Narcissism is caused when a child experiences abuse or neglect. Some narcissists are created from really intense abuse. I know a guy who was locked in his closet by his mother and was left in there for hours. He had to poop and pee in this closet. And his brain figured out that he wouldn't have those things happen to him if he was performing in these other dimensions. But the abuse and the neglect can be so much more simple than that. It can just be that you only got attention when you were the best at church, or when you were the best at sports or the best at school. In this way, narcissists learn that their authentic selves is not worth loving. And the message that they essentially get is that nobody is coming to save you. You have to take care of yourself in this world. And in fact, that's kind of how I was. I kind of just believed that everyone was here to take care of themselves, and I'll take care of me and you'll take care of you and everything's going to be fine. But that's not actually how it works. We try to get into relationships and we struggle as narcissists because we don't want to believe the real truth, which is that we need each other. In fact, the original story of Narcissus is where he was stuck looking down at his reflection until he starved. They truly are stuck in themselves because they don't believe deep down on a subconscious body level that anyone else will take care of them. And the idea of taking care of someone else just doesn't even compute. It's not even turned on. Empathy, if you think about it, is actually quite the luxury. It's not something that humans get to have when times are really hard. In fact, if I would think that a lot of people that were born in medieval times or Game of Thrones type times where it was very cutthroat and there extreme violence, I think most of those people were probably narcissists, meaning they were just stuck taking care of themselves, looking out for themselves. So if a child is born into a Game of Thrones type environment and they have to take care of themselves, it takes up a lot of brain space and mental load to be thinking about somebody else's needs. Then that's essentially what empathy is. As a child who thought that becoming student class president and the best athlete possible and making tons of money would make me loved, I had to put all of my brain space on the businesses that I was building, on the success that I was trying to create, and all the purchases that I was trying to make. Because somewhere in my brain, it was a survival need, because that's how I got love and attention from my parents and from my whole family. So in a narcissist's mind, the switch for empathy is turned off so they have more bandwidth to be focusing on themselves. Now, there's one more reason that narcissists struggle with empathy, and I'll use a story to explain it to you. So I went on a trip with my ex-wife now and our kids, and I went into the gas station. I grabbed treats for me and I grabbed treats for the boys, and I came back out and she looked up at me and said, "Where's the Sour Patch Kids?" And I was like, "Oh, I forgot. I'm sorry." And she started to sob and she was like, "You never think of me." Every time I tell that story, it kind of breaks my heart. And I was just like, at the time I thought, well, I'm just ADHD. I just forgot. Like, what's her problem? And I actually got mad at her. I said, "I'm ADHD. How dare you, like, take that personally? It's just how my brain works," you know? And what happened there in that moment, the reason I couldn't, she was crying in front of me and I was getting really angry, was because I had so much shame for the fact that I wasn't thoughtful. Narcissists also often have a shame of just not being enough in general. And so a lot of emotions can send them spinning. But for me, I was blocked in being empathetic to her in that moment because of the deeply rooted shame. And every single narcissist has lots and lots of shame. And that's why they become a narcissist to begin with. And so the two reasons for lack of empathy in a narcissist are actually shown in that story right there. The first is that I was just focused on myself and the kids, but the kids actually, if I can keep them quiet, I feel better too. So that was still the reason I got treats for the kids. So the switch in my brain was not thinking, oh, what does she need? I was just thinking about myself. And then the second, in the moment where she was feeling sad and I couldn't respond, was because I had too much shame. So there's an automation present and there's shame present. So the next obvious question is, how does a narcissist practice empathy? How do you make those changes? The answer is actually very inherent to what we've already learned so far. My favorite quote from Rumi is, "The wound is where the light is let in." Meaning, when my dad died and when I experienced divorce, it was extremely painful for me. But that's where empathy actually made its way into my heart. Bring it back to the Game of Thrones analogy. Who was the most empathetic character in Game of Thrones? It was the dwarf. It was Tyrion Lannister. He himself experienced ridicule and pain his whole life. And he becomes our most favorite character because over and over, he's always helping the little guy. He's always out to make the world a little bit better place because he himself experienced so much pain as a child. What a narcissist needs to learn to do is to actually experience the pain of others that they love in those moments. Rumi says that you have to keep breaking your heart until it opens. I think that narcissists, if you get all the way to age 35 like I did, and someone starts telling you something sad, and for the first time you actually try to get in there with them and feel their pain, it actually hurts. I was quite surprised when I first did. I felt like this pain of my partner telling me something that was really making her sad. Brene Brown says that pity is when you stand at the top of a pit and you look down at your friend and say, "Oh man, sucks that you're in that pit." But empathy is when you get down inside the pit with them and say, wow, this sucks. This hurts. And the reason that narcissists really struggle to get that food at Chick-fil-A or to get the Sour Patch Kids for their partner, or they don't seem able to do a lot of these things, is because they actually just haven't felt the empathy. And the empathy is what rewires the brain to be thoughtful of that person. So what I do now is when my partner Kira is telling me something that really hurt her, I try my hardest to open my heart to that feeling. I might not have the exact same feeling as her, but I've probably had something similar in my life. And I'll say, I've never experienced that, but I have experienced this. And I put it right next to it and go, I'm here with you in that pit. I'm sorry, this hurts. And it's been quite transformational for me. But for other people, they might automatically do that. But for a narcissist, you have to very intentionally do those things. And what you'll find, it's not just that there's one switch that needs to be turned on. There's actually a handful of switches that needs to be turned on. Empathy for your partner's insecurity about X. Empathy for your child's pain around this. Empathy for, you name it. Trying to put yourself in their shoes, feel their pain, then you start to really care. And if this is going out to a narcissist who's never experienced this, I'm excited for you because it's a really, really beautiful experience. Love is what gives this life meaning. And I feel that by opening my heart to more and more love, the world has so much more meaning. And I actually don't feel as much even need to chase the external validations that I used to. So as the partner of somebody who is a narcissist or has those tendencies, how can you help? Well, the first thing you can do is help them notice when they're not being empathetic. It's quite the automatic reaction for somebody to want to get mad when someone's not empathetic, because we made ourselves vulnerable. We exposed our heart and said, hey, here's what I'm feeling. And they respond in such a shitty way. We want to get mad at them, and you have to kind of fight that. And first thing you need to do is let them know that they weren't empathetic, and do it in a very loving way. You don't have to hug them and say, oh baby, you didn't make me feel good. You can go, ouch, that hurt. You can start to remove your energy and say, that really hurts me. I needed your help with this. This is what partnerships are for. I love you so much, but I can't let you hurt me like that. I'm going to go take some time for myself. I hope I can do that. And by helping them notice that they're not being empathetic, it gives them a chance to try and be empathetic, because this person does love you. I promise you, they love you. And that's hard to feel sometimes when you've been through so much. But you just have to understand they've got some walls that they need to be broken down. They've got some switches that need to be flipped. But they can be flipped, and they can show up as the loving partner that you need. But you need to help them notice where they're off. The other thing you can do is help point out where there is shame. If they don't already have a list of their shame and they're not working on it, you can start to make a list of their shame and try to help them notice it. I noticed. And it's when their reaction is disproportionate to the actual situation. I freaked out about the Sour Patch Kids way more than I should have. And it's a great sign of there's the bomb shouldn't have been that big. It should have been this little thing, but it was this big thing. So there's probably some shame behind that. And if you can point at that and say, honey, do you think maybe there's some shame? Your reaction was not proportionate, I believe, to the actual situation. So can we look at this together? And are you willing to look at maybe shame is what's underneath that? And if you can help just point these things out, they can pause and reflect on them. You have to remember, a narcissist is very childlike in their emotions. They're kind of stuck at 5 years old emotionally. And so just like you wouldn't jump on a 5-year-old and say, hey, you need to this and did it. You just say, sorry that hurt you. Be empathetic, and I'm sorry that made you feel that way. I really am. But what you just did made me feel this way. What's important is to not get defensive and to not be critical of them. But instead, you need to be vulnerable and say how it made you feel. So you can expose, if I could redo that Sour Patch Kids with my partner, if she had said, "Sweetheart, I feel so hurt right now that you didn't get the Sour Patch Kids. That hurts me." I might have still responded in another way, bigger, but angrily. And if she again said, "This hurts me even more. I'm so hurt by this," I think it would have been different. That actually wasn't the dynamic with my ex-wife. She would very quickly get into attacking mode. And I think that's the biggest thing I noticed between her, which honestly, I don't blame her for getting into attacking mode. I think that's like the normal human response. Kira was a true angel when she was able to pause and just help me notice my shame, help me notice where I was off empathetically. And then continually being vulnerable, not critiquing, and not being defensive. And just focusing on her feelings, what she was feeling, not about me. I'm going to put a link in the description to a book called Nonviolent Communication, which is a super helpful book for explaining how to do a lot of the things that I just outlined in this video. It'll take you a click deeper and make you even more proficient at these things. I've built billion-dollar businesses. I've traveled the whole world. And I can honestly say that love is the best feeling I've ever felt. It's the most fulfilling thing that just gives this life so much meaning. And I hope that this video is going to help you and your partner experience more of it. Because I think that's all that really matters. So, I'll see you later.